Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to Physics C1 class. In lesson 1 part 1 we have started the chapter forces. In lesson 1 part 2 we are going to discuss how to solve questions based on Cambridge pattern. These questions they have been taken from past paper. The subtopics of the chapter are forces, balanced and unbalanced forces, Newton's third law of motion. Objectives of the current lecture are, by the end of the lesson, students will be able to attempt questions based on Cambridge pattern. Question number 1. Figure shows a car traveling at 30 meter per second speed on a level road. At this speed, the car has to overcome a total force of 600 Newton opposing the car. So you can see over here, one is the driving force acting towards the right, other is the opposing force acting towards the left. State the value of the driving force produced by the engine for a steady speed of 30 meter per second. When speed is constant, in that case, balanced forces are acting on the body. Balanced forces mean forward force will be equal to backward force. The value of the backward force, that is the opposing force, that is 600 Newton. That will be equivalent to the forward driving force in case of constant steady speed. Therefore, the value of the forward force will be 600 Newton. It will be equivalent to the backward force. Question number 2. A person just supports a mass of 20 kg suspended from a rope. What is the resultant force acting on the mass? It will be 0. It will be equivalent to the weight downward force, and the weight is the downward force, and the force exerted on this rope, that is the tension. So tension and the weight, they will be equal and opposite. So if they are equal and opposite, in that case resultant force is 0. Correct answer is A. What is the statement of Newton's third law of motion? Every force causes a reaction. Option B, if there is no resultant force on a body, there is no acceleration. Option C, the forces acting on a body are always equal and opposite. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So D is the correct answer. It corresponds to the accurate statement of Newton's third law of motion. Question number 4. Several forces they act on a train when it is moving. Part A, name the horizontal and vertical forces that act on a train and give the direction of each force. So the vertical forces are what the weight act in the downward direction, and the reaction force, that is the reaction force exerted by the ground on the train, that will be in the upward direction. So weight and the reaction force over here, they are the vertical forces. Horizontal forces will be the air resistance, which is acting in the backward direction. And the other horizontal force will be the thrust exerted by the train engine in the forward direction. Second part, explain whether the horizontal forces are balanced or unbalanced when the train accelerates. Whenever the train accelerates, it means that the forces acting on the body, they are unbalanced. If they are unbalanced, it means that the forward force will not be equivalent to the backward force. In case of accelerating situation, the forward force will be greater as compared to the backward force. Second part, when the train travels at constant speed. When train is traveling at constant speed, there it is the forces acting, they are balanced. Balance means the forward force will be equivalent to the backward force. And in that case, the net force, resultant force will be 0. The third part, when the train decelerates. This situation happens when the backward force, which is the resistance, it is greater than the forward force, that is the thrust exerted by the train engine in the forward direction. So forward force over here will be smaller and the backward force will be greater. In that case, the train is said to be decelerating. In this situation, unbalanced forces they are acting. Question number 5. The propeller on the boat pushes water backward with a force of 2000 Newton. The boat moves through the water against a total resistive force of 1800 Newton. The situation is shown in the diagram. According to the Newton's third law of motion, what is the forward force on the propeller due to the water? So the force exerted, that will be equivalent to 2000 Newton, because action and reaction they are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. The propeller on the boat pushes the water backward with the force of 2000 Newton. So as a reaction, what will be the reaction? The forward force on the propeller by the water will be also 2000 Newton. So B is the correct answer. Next. Question number 6. The figure shows the horizontal forces acting on a moving car. One is force A, other is force B. Compare the sizes and the direction of the two forces when the car is moving along a straight road at constant speed. Keep this in mind. In constant speed, the forward force and the backward force, their magnitude is same. So force A will be equivalent to force B. Second part, accelerating. If it is accelerating, it means that the forward force will be greater as compared to the backward force. The forward force over here is force B. Force B will be greater than as compared to the force A. Question number 7. A wooden block is pushed across a table at constant speed. Which statement is correct? Option B is the correct answer. The frictional force is equal and opposite to the pushing force. It is mentioned that the block is moving with constant speed. So that's why the pushing force and the force of friction, they will have equal magnitude, but their direction will be opposite. Option B is the correct answer. Question number 8. The figure shows how the horizontal forces they are acting on a cyclist as he travels forwards. The cyclist produces the driving force that acts on the back wheel. In this question, you may ignore any frictional force acting on the front wheel. The bicycle accelerates until a constant speed is reached. Describe how the size of air resistance changes during this time. Obviously, if the speed is changing, it is increasing, the air resistance will also going to increase. Then what happens when speed become constant? Air resistance become equivalent to the driving force. The backward force becomes equal to the forward force. Part B, compare the sizes of the two horizontal forces when the bicycle is accelerating. Whenever an object is accelerating, the forward force is greater as compared to the backward force. Over here, the forward force is the driving force. It will be larger as compared to the backward force, which is the air resistance. Question number 9. A hard stone hits the ground and comes to rest. As the stone hits the ground, what is the direction and the size of the force acting on the ground? The correct answer is B, downward, and it will be larger than the weight of the stone. So it will going to exert a force in the downward direction, and it will be downward as compared, it will be larger as compared to the weight of the stone. Next question. Question number 10. The figure shows a motor used to operate a lift. There is a person in the lift. The lift and the man have a total weight of 5,800 Newton. On the figure, label the tension in the cable when the lift is moving at constant speed. The weight of the lift is acting in the downward direction. Weight is always shown by the downward arrow. Tension will be the force acting along the cable. it will going to act in opposite direction to the weight, and over here it will be upward. State the value of the tension in the cable when the lift is moving at constant speed. At constant speed, the downward force will be equal to upward force. The magnitude of the upward force will be equivalent to the downward force. Downward force is the weight. Its value is 5,800 in Newton. Therefore, tension will be also equal to 5,800 Newton. Next question, question number 11. The figure shows two horizontal forces that act on a car. Force B is caused by the air resistance and friction. The car is traveling along a straight level road. So over here, two forces are acting in the backward direction. Together, they are said to be the force B. One is the force exerted by the air on the car in the backward direction, and other is the friction between the tire and the road acting in the backward direction. Describe the two forces A and B, they are equal. Describe the motion of the car. If the two forces they are equal and opposite, the car will be moving with constant speed. And acceleration is zero when a body is moving with constant speed. Question number 12. Balance forces are acting on a moving body. What happens to the direction of the movement and to the speed of the body? Under the action of balance forces, there is no change in the speed and in the direction of the movement of the body. So correct answer is D. No change in the direction of the movement as well as the speed. Question number 13. A man pushes a heavy box along the ground. The force act between the man's hand and the box. Another force act between the man's feet and the floor. In which direction do the forces act on the man? Correct option is B. The force on the man's hand is the force exerted by the box on the hand. So it will be towards left because the person is applying the force on the box by the hand in the forward direction towards right. So according to Newton's third law of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Action is the force exerted by the hand on the box towards right. Reaction is the force exerted on the man's hand by the box towards left. And the force on the man's feet, that is towards right. The man is pushing the ground in the backward direction. That is the action. The reaction is the force exerted by the ground on the feet in opposite direction, that will be towards right. So B is the correct option. Question number 14. The diagram shows a block of stone on a rough horizontal surface. Force P acts on the block as shown. The block is in the state of rest. A frictional force acts on the block, which row shows the direction and the size of F. F is the frictional force. P is the pushing force. So frictional force always act in opposite direction. Correct answer is C. Direction of F is towards left. P is acting towards right. F will going to act towards left. Its magnitude will be the same as of P because the block is in the state of rest. If a body is in the state of rest, forward and backward forces, they have same magnitude. Magnitude of frictional force will be the same as P. Its direction will be opposite to P. Direction of P is towards right. Direction of F will be towards left. C is the correct answer. Question number 15 shows a lorry accelerating in a straight line along a horizontal road. The driving force on the lorry in the forward direction is capital D, and the total backward force on the lorry is B. State and explain whether D or B is larger force. If the lorry accelerate in that situation, D, that is the forward force, it will be greater as compared to the backward force. Suggest one possible cause of the backward force. Backward forces, they are usually due to the air resistance. Question number 16. Four forces act on a point. What is the size of the resultant force? 2 Newton, 2 Newton, they are vertical forces. 4 Newton and 8 Newton, they are the horizontal forces. Vertical forces, they cancel out the effect of each other. So the net force, the resultant force for the vertical forces is 0. But for the horizontal forces, we have the final answer is 4 Newton. How? How it is 4 Newton? 8 Newton minus 4 Newton. Question number 17. Newton's third law of motion involves two quantities which are equal in size and opposite in direction. What is the unit of these quantities? Both action and reaction, they are forces. And SI unit of force is Newton. C is the correct answer. Question number 17. The satellite is placed into an orbit by the rocket. The rocket shows the rocket takes off as shown in the diagram. The rocket and the fuel together, they have total weight of 400,000 Newton. The resultant force acting upward on the rocket is 50,000 Newton. Calculate the thrust produced by the rocket again. Over here, we're going to use the formula of resultant force. Resultant force is equivalent to thrust minus weight. There are two forces acting, weight acting in the downward direction, thrust acting in the upward direction. Thrust minus weight. Thrust over here will be greater as compared to the weight. Resultant force is equal to thrust minus weight. Value of resultant force is given, that is 50,000, and the value of weight is also given, and that is 400,000. Weight on this side is being subtracted, on the other side it will be added. So resultant force plus weight will be equivalent to the thrust. Final answer is 450,000 Newton. Next question. The figures show the speed time graph for a car traveling along a horizontal road. Explain in terms of horizontal forces that act on the car why its speed is 0 when time is 1 second. Speed is constant. Why the speed is constant when time is 1 second? Speed is constant whenever the forward and backward forces, they are equal. When forward and backward forces are equal, they are said to be balanced forces. If they are balanced, resultant force will be 0. Similarly, acceleration will be also 0. Question number 19. The diagram shows a block of wood resting on a board. Which diagram shows the direction of the gravitational force acting on the block? Gravitational force is the weight. Weight always act in the downward direction. Correct option is option A. Next question, question number 20. A hanging basket is fixed to a wall by a bracket. The weight of the basket is 80 Newton. The weight of the bracket is 20 Newton. What is the size of the upward force exerted on the bracket by the wall? Over here, two downward forces are acting, 80 Newton and 20 Newton. Upward force will be equivalent to the sum of downward forces. There are two downward forces, 80 plus 20, answer is 100 Newton. Next question, an aircraft flying at a constant height is gaining speed. The four forces are acting, what is the correct? L is the lift due to the wings, that is acting in the upward direction, vertical force. Weight is the downward force. Lift and weight, they are two vertical forces. Horizontal forces are the thrust of the engine and the air resistance R. So C is the correct option. The vertical forces, they are equal, but horizontal forces, they are not equal. As it is mentioned, it is gaining speed. Gaining speed means that it is accelerating. An object always accelerate when the forward force is greater as compared to the backward force. Forward force is the thrust, backward force is the air resistance. Correct answer is C. It is at constant height. It means that weight and the lift due to the wings, they are equal. Next question. The figure shows the direction of four forces acting on a racing car as it travels in a horizontal line. Draw a line from each box on the left to to the correct description of each force. Force A over here, you can see that it is acting in the upward direction. So basically what is that? It will be the contact force, right? It will be the contact force or the normal reaction force. Next question, next part, force B. Force B over here, you can see that it is the force shown beside the car in towards right. So that is what it is, the driving force provided by the engine. Force C is the downward force. Downward force is the weight, force of gravity. Force D is shown in the backward direction and it is shown towards the left side, which is the horizontal force. It is what? The air resistance and friction. Next part, part B, the table shows the sizes of the forces acting on the car at one point. Calculate the resultant force on the car. Resultant force will be equivalent to force B minus force D. They are the two horizontal forces. Force B is the driving force acting in the forward direction. Force D is the air resistance and friction acting in the backward direction. Value of driving force is given. Force B is 1000. Value of force of friction is also given. It is the force D 600. 1000 minus 600 becomes 400 Newton. Next question. The figure shows a 0.4 kg mass hanging at rest from a spring. On the figure, draw an arrow showing the direction and the line of action for each of the two forces that act on the mass. Write the name of the force next to each. We have to identify and write the name of two vertical forces. One is the weight acting in the downward direction. Other is the upward force, which is the tension acting along the spring. Part B. The weight of the block is 4 Newton. State the size of the two forces acting on the mass. As the body is in the state of rest, therefore downward force will be equivalent to upward force. Magnitude of weight is 4 Newton, therefore magnitude of tension is also 4 Newton. The mass is pulled downward. State and explain what happens to the upward force. Upward force, obviously it will going to increase. The tension in the spring will going to increase as spring becomes longer or it is stretched. Question number 24. How is the motion of the body affected by balance and unbalanced forces acting on it? Correct option is C. Under the action of balanced forces, no change in velocity. Under the action of unbalanced forces, the velocity changes. Question number 25. Two horizontal forces act on an aeroplane as it accelerates along the runway. On the figure, draw to show the direction and the relative magnitude of these two forces. It is mentioned that aeroplane it accelerate. If it is accelerating, forward force it will be greater as compared to the backward force. Forward force is the thrust exerted by the engine of the aeroplane in the forward direction. Its length of this line will be longer as compared to the backward force, which is friction or air resistance. It will be drawn in the backward direction. Its length will be kept smaller as compared to the forward force. State what causes the smaller of these two forces. The smaller force is the friction, and that is due to the air resistance, the drag. The backward force is due to what? It is due to the resistance. Next question. As the rocket burns fuel, it ejects hot gases downward. Part A. State Newton's third law of motion. It is very simple. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Part B. Explain how the Newton's third law of motion apply to the upward force on the rocket and to the force on the hot gases. Hot gases, they are moving downward. When the fuel inside the rocket it burns, gases are produced and they move out in the downward direction. That is the action. Now, what is the reaction? As a reaction, there is a force acting on the rocket exerted by the gases on the rocket in the upward direction. And both these two forces, they have equal magnitude, but their direction is opposite. Next question. The diagram shows a firework rocket. As the rocket flies through the air, three forces act on it. These forces are weight, thrust, and air resistance. What are the names of these forces? You have to identify. Correct option is D. Q is what? The thrust, the forward thrust. And S is the air resistance. The backward force is the air resistance. And R is the weight. Correct option is D. Next question. A student kicks a ball horizontally along the ground. As he does so, his foot applies a force to the ball. At the same time, the ball applies a force to his foot. How do these forces compare? They will be equal in magnitude and opposite direction. Option A is the correct answer. The force on the foot is equal to the force on the ball and in opposite direction. Question number 29. A set of traffic light hang from the end of a metal cable. A horizontal chain pulls the traffic light to the right, so they are above the middle of the road. The figure shows the metal cable inclined to the vertical. Two of the forces on the traffic signals are tension in the horizontal chain and other is the weight of the traffic light. On the figure part A, mark an arrow that represents the tension in the horizontal cable. This is the horizontal cable. Tension will be shown in towards right. Part B, draw an arrow that represents the weight of the traffic light. You will going to draw a downward arrow from the middle point of the traffic light in the downward direction and it will be labeled as weight. Next question. Explain in terms of forces acting why the acceleration of a train decreases. This happens when backward force is greater as compared to the forward force. Backward force is air resistance or friction. So it is more as compared to the thrust of the engine. Resultant force decreases as the train decelerates. Second part, why the train eventually reaches the constant speed. As speed increases, air resistance also increases. Finally, it becomes equal to the forward force, the forward driving force of the train. Next, four of the gravitational forces that act between the bodies in the solar system are described below. P is the force on the moon due to the earth. Q is the force on the earth due to the sun. R is the force on the earth due to the moon. S is the force on the moon due to the sun. Which two forces are a Newton's third law pair, action and reaction? Correct answer is the option B, which is P and R. P is the force on the moon due to the earth. Then its opposite will be what? R, the force of the earth due to the moon. So moon and earth, they have equal and opposite forces. Option Q and S, they are incorrect. Q is showing the force between earth and sun and S is showing the force between moon and sun. The object should be same. In P, in option P, the object is moon and earth. In option R, the object is again moon and earth. So the objects should be same. Correct answer is B. Next question. Each diagram shows two forces that are equal in magnitude. Which diagram shows forces that are Newton's law pair of forces? Correct option is C. They are equal in magnitude, opposite in direction, and they are acting on different bodies, not on the same body. Over here, they are acting on this. It is shown in the same body. Over here, also the same. Over here, the forces are acting in different bodies, but their magnitude is not same. The length of the weight arrow is smaller as compared to the length of the air resistance. According to the law, they should be acting on different bodies, their magnitude should be same and the direction should be opposite. So correct answer is C. Next question. A man with an open parachute is falling to the earth at constant speed. The following forces are acting. P, the upward force of the parachute on the man. Q, the upward force of the man on the earth. R, the downward force of the earth on the parachute. S, the downward force of the man on the parachute. Which two pairs are the Newton's third law pair? C is the correct answer. P and S, because over here the objects are same. P, the upward force of the parachute on the man, and S, the downward force of the man on the parachute. So that is the correct option. The objects should be the same and the forces should be equal and opposite to each other. So in P and S, we have same object, parachute and man, and the magnitude is same and the direction is opposite, upward force, downward force. So C is the correct answer, force P and S. Next question, a car is accelerating along a straight horizontal road. The diagram shows the forces acting on the car. Which forces are balanced? We have to identify the balance forces. Over here we can easily see that the driving force and the air resistance, and we can see the weight and the weight and the contact forces. So B is the correct answer. The contact forces and the weight, they are balanced forces. It is mentioned the car is accelerating, meaning that driving force is greater than air resistance. Driving force and air resistance, they are not balanced. Air driving force is greater as compared to the air resistance. According to the question, the car is accelerating. So what is left? The vertical forces. We have two upward contact forces and one the weight. The correct answer is B, contact forces and the weight. Next question. The figure shows a man pushing a heavy box with the force P. A frictional force F acts in a horizontal direction. The forces on the boxes are balanced and the box is stationary. State what is meant by balanced forces. Balanced forces mean that the resultant force acting on the body is zero. Balanced forces mean that they are equal and opposite to each other. Second part, apart from being stationary, describe one other possible state of motion of the box when the forces are balanced. Other situation is that the box is moving with constant speed, constant velocity in the same direction. Next question, a hot air balloon is traveling at constant speed and it is moving toward the ground. The diagram shows uh, the forces acting on the balloon. Which statement is correct? A is the correct answer. The horizontal forces W and Y, they are equal, and the vertical forces X and Z, they are equal. It is mentioned it is moving with constant speed. So horizontal and vertical forces, they are all equal. Next, the two small tugboats are pulling a large ship. The figure represents the view from the above and show the direction of the forces on the ship. The engines of the ship are not operating and the water in the harbor is stationary. The ship is moving in a straight line in the direction of the total force exerted by the tugboats. It is traveling at a constant speed. Explain in terms of forces acting why the ship is moving in a straight line at constant speed. The reason is that the forces exerted, they are balanced forces. Whenever we have constant speed, the forces are balanced. When forces are balanced, there is no resultant force. Or you can say that the forces exerted by the tugboat, they are equal and opposite to the water resistance exerted in the backward direction. An apple falls from a tree. Which road describes the forces acting on an apple and the motion of the apple as it falls? Whenever it is falling downward, it will be moving, it will be accelerating, its speed will be increasing. So whenever any object falls in the presence of air, its speed increases, right? So correct option is C. The forces acting on the apple, they are unbalanced. As the body is accelerating, the speed is increasing, and the motion of the apple is that it is accelerating. C is the correct option. That is for all today. Please kindly practice these questions. I hope discussion of these questions help you in better understanding of the topic. Allah Hafiz.